Want scary stories? Listen.
Before I begin this story, I want to explain how it came to me. A few weeks ago, one of my subscribers sent me a message. He asked me not to reveal his name and to change the names of everyone involved. At the end of his letter, he added only one sentence: "I do not want to keep this inside me anymore. Maybe if someone hears my story, they will not make the same mistake." I do not know if this story is real or not, but after reading the entire letter, I knew I would not be able to sleep peacefully for a long time. This is what he wrote. My name is Michael. Several years ago, I lived in a small suburban neighborhood where almost everyone knew each other. Across from my house lived a woman named Sarah. She was 32 years old. She worked as a nurse at the city hospital, often taking night shifts, and she always seemed like a kind person. Sometimes we talked over the fence. Sometimes she brought cookies for my daughter. She never seemed like someone who believed in anything supernatural. If someone had told me back then that a few days later the police would be searching the entire neighborhood for Sarah and that her house would remain empty forever, I would have laughed. Everything started on a cold November evening. After work, Sarah stopped at a small 24-hour store. She bought some groceries and was about to drive home when she walked out into the parking lot. The rain started falling harder. Besides her car, there was only one other vehicle there, an old dark pickup truck. Under the store roof sat a very old woman. In front of her was a small folding table. On the table were a worn deck of cards, a wooden box, and several old silver coins. As Sarah walked past, the woman suddenly raised her head. "Girl, come here. I only need to tell you one thing." Sarah politely smiled. "I am sorry, but I do not believe in fortune-telling." The old woman slowly shook her head. "I am not going to tell your fortune. I want to warn you." Sarah stopped for only a moment. She felt sorry for the old woman, but after a 12-hour shift, all she wanted was to get home. "I am sorry. I really cannot." The old woman slowly stood up. Despite her age, she moved with surprising ease. She walked closer, so close that Sarah noticed a strange smell, the smell of wet earth. The woman opened her hand. Inside was an old silver coin. "Then we will make an exchange. You take my coin, and give me any coin you have. That is all I ask." Sarah nervously laughed. "I am sorry, but no." She walked around the woman and quickly headed toward her car. When the door closed behind her, Sarah finally relaxed. Strange old woman, she thought. But as she started the engine, she accidentally looked into the rear-view mirror, and the blood drained from her face. The old woman was no longer standing near the table. She was standing directly behind the car, very close. The rain was pouring down, yet the woman's clothes were completely dry. She was not smiling. She was simply staring into the mirror. Then she slowly raised her hand. Her lips moved. Sarah could not hear any sound, but she clearly understood the words. "Now he knows where to find you." At that exact moment, every light inside the car went out. The screen of the entertainment system turned black. The headlights disappeared. The engine stopped. She tried turning the key again. Nothing happened. And then someone slowly knocked on the driver's side window. Knock, knock, knock. Sarah turned her head. There was nobody there. She froze. For several seconds, she just stared into the dark window, unable to understand what was happening. Her heart was beating so loudly that it almost covered the sound of the rain. She slowly reached for her phone. The screen would not turn on. as if the battery had suddenly completely died. Then, just as suddenly, the dashboard came back to life. The headlights turned on. The engine started, as if nothing had happened. Sarah did not look back again. She pressed the gas pedal and drove home as quickly as possible. The entire way, she kept checking the rear-view mirror. She felt like someone was following her, but the road behind her was completely empty. The next morning, Sarah looked like she had not slept at all. I met her near the mailboxes. She was standing there with a cup of coffee, staring down the street. "Good morning," I said. She suddenly turned around. "Sorry, I did not hear you coming. Is everything okay?" She stayed silent for a moment. Then she asked me a strange question. "Have you ever felt like someone was watching you?" I smiled. Only after watching horror movies. But Sarah did not smile. "Last night, I thought someone was standing outside my house. Maybe it was a neighbor." She slowly shook her head. "No, he was not moving. He was just standing there." I looked out the window for a second, and when I turned on the outside light, he was gone. I thought it was just exhaustion from her difficult shift. I told her she needed to get some sleep. But that evening, when I came home, I noticed something strange. Near Sarah's front porch, there were footprints in the mud. Very large footprints, much bigger than a normal human foot. And the strangest thing was this. The footprints led toward her front door, but there were no footprints going back, as if whoever left them had disappeared right there. That night, Sarah woke up exactly at 3:17 in the morning. She was awakened by a quiet, metallic sound, like someone slowly running a finger across her mailbox. The scraping continued for almost a minute. Then everything became silent. A few seconds later, 3 slow knocks came from the front door. Knock, knock, knock. Sarah looked at the clock. 3:17. She knew she should not open the door, but curiosity was stronger than fear. She slowly walked toward the door and looked through the peephole. There was nobody outside. She was about to step away when she noticed something on the ground. Right in front of the door was an old silver coin, the same kind of coin the strange woman had offered her near the store. Sarah immediately stepped back. She was certain there had been nothing there when she went to bed. She waited until sunrise. Only then did she finally open the door. The coin was still there, cold, blackened by age. On one side was the image of a woman, and on the other side, someone had scratched 3 words into the metal. "You already agreed." Sarah threw the coin into the trash container near her house. That evening, when she returned from work, she opened the front door and froze. The coin was lying on the floor, inside, in the exact same place. But this time, there was something else beside it, a small note. Only one sentence was written on it. "You cannot refuse twice." I immediately drove to Sarah's house. She opened the door almost instantly. I could see from her face that she had not slept again. On the kitchen table was the same silver coin. Next to it was the note. "I threw it away yesterday morning," she whispered. "I threw it away with my own hands, and today it was back." I picked up the coin. It was freezing cold, so cold that my fingers started going numb after only a few seconds. I wanted to look at it closer, but suddenly I noticed a strange smell, the smell of wet earth, exactly the same smell that came from the old woman near the store. I quickly put the coin back down. "We need to call the police." Sarah gave a bitter smile. "And what am I supposed to tell them? That a coin keeps coming back by itself?" I had no answer. That same day, Sarah decided to install cameras, not only outside the house, but inside as well. One camera pointed at the front door. The second one watched the long hallway. The third one faced the staircase leading to the second floor. She said that if someone really was coming at night, the cameras would record everything. We checked them together. Everything was working perfectly. That night, I could not sleep. I do not know why, but I kept feeling like I needed to look outside. It was around 3 a.m. I looked through my window. Sarah's house was completely dark. Only the porch light was shining over the yard. And then someone appeared beneath the light. I did not see them walking there. It was as if they had not existed 1 second before. And then, suddenly, they were standing there, a very tall human figure, much taller than any normal person. It did not move. It did not tilt its head. Even the wind did not move its clothes. It simply stared at the house. I looked toward Sarah's bedroom window. The light was on. She was probably awake too. I looked back at the yard. The figure was gone. But 1 second later, a terrible scream came from Sarah's house. I had never heard a scream like that before. I ran outside. Several neighbors had also woken up and came out of their houses. We rushed toward Sarah's home. The front door was locked. From inside, we could hear heavy impacts, like someone was slowly walking up the stairs. One step, then another, and suddenly, complete silence. A few seconds later, the door opened. Sarah was standing there. She looked completely pale. Her entire body was shaking. She looked at all of us, but said nothing. Then she whispered, "He is already inside." "Who?" She slowly turned toward the staircase. "He does not come from outside anymore. He lives in my house now." We carefully walked inside. The first floor was empty. There were no signs of anyone being there. No broken windows, no forced entry, nothing. But when I looked up at the second floor, I thought I saw someone quickly disappear around the corner of the hallway. I ran upstairs. Nobody was there. Only one door was slowly closing by itself. I opened it. The room was empty, but on the fogged mirror, someone had recently written 4 words with a finger. "You let him in yourself." At that moment, Sarah's voice came from downstairs. "Michael, do not move. He is standing behind you." I froze. An icy feeling went down my spine. Very slowly, I started turning my head. There was nobody there. The room was completely empty. I let out a breath of relief, but Sarah kept staring behind me. Her face became even paler. "Do not turn around again," she whispered. "Why?" Tears filled her eyes. "Because now, he is looking at you." At that exact moment, every light in the house went out. The darkness was absolute. A second later, somewhere at the end of the hallway, we heard a heavy impact, like someone had taken the first step, then another, then another. The footsteps were getting closer. I turned on the flashlight on my phone. My hands were shaking. The hallway was empty, but the footsteps continued. They sounded like someone was walking directly toward us. I pointed the flashlight forward. Nobody was there. The footsteps stopped. Silence filled the house. Then Sarah's phone suddenly vibrated. A notification appeared from the security cameras. Motion detected. We immediately opened the camera app. The screen showed the hallway. The recording showed us. I was standing near the bedroom door. Sarah was a few steps behind me, but there was something else. Behind me, only a few feet away, a tall, black figure was standing there. It was so tall that its head almost touched the ceiling. There was no face, only darkness. We both turned around at the same time. Nobody was there. When we looked back at the screen, the figure had moved closer. Now it was standing directly between me and Sarah, even though there was nothing in the room. The image on the phone started breaking apart. The screen filled with static. Then a message appeared. Do not look back. I felt warm breath near my ear, very close, as if someone was standing right next to me. Then a quiet male voice whispered she was supposed to take the coin. I turned around instantly. Nobody was there. But at that exact moment, the front door downstairs slammed shut. Then another door, the kitchen door, one after another, as if someone was moving quickly through the house. We ran downstairs. Every door was closed, except one, the basement door. It was wide open. Cold air was coming from the darkness below, and the smell of wet earth filled the room. Sarah went completely pale. I never opened that door. From deep inside the basement came a quiet creaking sound. Then slow footsteps, not coming up, but going down, as if someone was walking even deeper. Somewhere beyond where the basement should have ended. I pointed my flashlight down the stairs. The basement seemed to go much deeper than it should have. The concrete steps were covered with a thin layer of dust. But on the dust, there were fresh footprints, huge footprints. They looked like they belonged to someone at least 8 feet tall. The footprints went downward, and they never came back. Someone had been down there. I whispered. Sarah slowly shook her head. No, the basement is empty. I have not gone down there for months. We started walking down. Every step made a loud creaking sound. The lower we went, the colder the air became. The flashlight began to flicker, first slightly, then more and more. When we reached the bottom, the beam of light stopped on an old wooden cabinet. Everything around us was covered in dust, except the floor. Across the ground were those same huge footprints. They led to the far brick wall, and then they simply disappeared, as if someone had walked directly into the concrete. Sarah raised her shaking hand and pointed the flashlight at the wall. Written across the bricks in black paint were 4 words: "The payment must be made." At that exact moment, the basement door behind us slammed shut. We both jumped. I ran toward the stairs. I grabbed the handle. The door would not open. I pushed with all my strength. Nothing. Someone had locked us inside. Sarah started crying. He is here. He brought us here on purpose. And then, from the darkest corner of the basement, came a sound. Heavy breathing. Not human. Slow. Deep. Like something enormous was slowly filling its lungs with air. I pointed the flashlight toward the corner. Nothing. But the breathing continued, and it was getting closer. 1 step. Then another. Then another. The beam of light suddenly moved across 2 long legs. Then a black coat. Then long arms. But there was no face. Only complete darkness. The figure stopped only a few meters away from us. It did not move. It made no sound. It simply watched, if you could even call it watching. And then, behind us, a familiar rough voice spoke. I only asked for 1 coin. We slowly turned around. The old woman from the parking lot was standing on the stairs, calm, as if she had been waiting for us all this time. "Why?" Sarah screamed. "Why did you do this to me?" The old woman sighed. "This is not a punishment. This is a debt." "What debt?" The old woman slowly walked down the final steps. "Every few years, he demands a new soul. When his time comes, I must offer someone a choice, only one coin. If a person accepts, he leaves. But if they refuse, he comes himself, and then the payment becomes much greater. Sarah stared at her in horror. You could have warned me. The old woman gave a sad smile. I did warn you, but people never listen. They think they can simply say no and walk away. At that moment, the tall figure moved for the first time, slowly. It raised one long arm and pointed directly at Sarah. The old woman closed her eyes. It is too late. He has already chosen. And in the next second, every light in the basement went out. For several seconds, the world disappeared. I could not see anything. I could not hear anything. I only felt the freezing air around me and the smell of wet earth. Then, suddenly, the flashlight turned back on. The tall figure was gone. The old woman was gone too. Only Sarah and I remained in the basement. We have to leave, I shouted. The basement door above us suddenly opened by itself. We ran up the stairs. When we reached the first floor, I slammed the basement door shut and pushed a heavy cabinet in front of it. Even though I knew that if this creature truly existed, a piece of furniture would never stop it. Sarah sat on the floor, unable to stop crying. Then she looked at me. He said he would come back tonight. Who? I did not hear a voice, but I knew he was speaking to me. He will come exactly at 3:17, and if I am alone, he will take me. I was not going to leave her alone. That evening, I sent my wife and daughter to stay with relatives. I stayed at Sarah's house. I locked every door. I closed every window. I turned on every light in the house. Until 3 a.m, nothing happened. For a moment, we started thinking it was finally over. But exactly at 3:17, every light in the house went out at the same time. A second later, we heard a knock. Knock, knock, knock. But it was not coming from the door. It was coming from the bedroom wall, as if someone was standing on the other side of the house, knocking directly on the bricks. Then the sound moved. To the ceiling. Knock, knock, knock. We slowly looked upward. The wooden boards above us began to creak, even though the attic could only be reached through a small hatch in the hallway. And then, someone took 3 heavy steps across the ceiling. Boom, boom, boom. After that, silence. I turned on my flashlight, and suddenly, Sarah screamed. I turned around. She was not looking at the ceiling. She was looking behind me. Very slowly. I turned. At the end of the hallway stood the tall black figure. Now I could see it completely. It almost touched the ceiling. Its arms were impossibly long. Its fingers dragged along the floor. There was still no face, only endless darkness. The figure slowly raised one hand and pointed at Sarah. Then it took one step forward, then another, then a third, and suddenly, every smoke alarm in the house activated at the same time. A terrible, piercing sound filled every room. I closed my eyes for a second. When I opened them, the hallway was empty. The figure was gone. I ran toward Sarah, but she was gone too. No more than 2 seconds had passed. She could not have disappeared that quickly. We searched for her all night. The police checked every part of the house. The attic, the basement, the backyard, the forest behind the neighborhood. But Sarah was never found. The only thing left behind in her bedroom was one old silver coin and a small note. Only 4 words were written on it. The debt is finally paid. 6 years have passed since that night. The house was sold several times, but no one ever lived there longer than a month. Every new owner told the same story. Every night, at exactly 3:17 in the morning. Someone knocked 3 times on the front door. Knock, knock, knock. And if someone opened the door, there was never anyone outside, only an old silver coin. I never drive past that store anymore, but sometimes I have the same dream. The old woman is standing under the store roof. She is smiling, and she asks me the same question. Young man, do you happen to have one coin? And every morning, after that dream, I wake up at exactly 3:17 because someone knocks 3 times on my front door. And no matter how many times it happens, I still have never found the courage to look through the peephole, because deep inside, I know what I might see. Maybe there would be nobody there. Maybe it would only be a forgotten coin lying on the ground. Or maybe I would see someone standing in the darkness, waiting, just like Sarah saw that night. I used to believe that strange things only happened to people who were looking for them, people who searched for mysteries, people who wanted to find something supernatural. But I was wrong. Sometimes something finds you first. Sometimes all it needs is one small mistake, one moment of curiosity, one decision you cannot take back. And sometimes all it takes is one coin.